キラークイーンの特殊能力。それは触れたものはどんなものでも爆弾に変えることができる。何であろうと。たとえ100円玉だろうと。
100円玉を捨てろとハーベスト
Sentry mode activated. Target acquired.
Hey there, hunters. Welcome back to the Gunners Guild. Kind of reverting on that. So today we're going to be talking about Killer Queen and her explosions. Now in Stories 2 we have a few options for fire and blast monsters, like kind of a lot of options actually. And most of them are pretty solid. Azure Rathlos, Bracky, Glav, Pink Rathian, Basil Goose, soon Hellblade, Silver Rathlos and Gold later, and of course Teostra. But I decided to run with Dreadqueen as my bomber, not just because I can make this Killer Queen meme, but also it's just really strong. So let's get into talk about why Dreadqueen. Taking a look at Dreadqueen's stats, they're pretty solid across the board, both offensively and defensively. She still is inferior to Teostra, sure, but she has better defenses than Bracky and Glav, while supporting similar offensive stats. Obviously she's a deviant, so she's going to be a bit better than 6-star monsters, but the real reason why her over Teostra is that she's a speed monster and speed fire, and pretty much only Rathians are that. Every other fire monster that's Elite Rare 5 is power, so she does have an edge in that regard. She also has really good critical stat, which is pretty important, and she's weak only to dragon type, which is very uncommon. Teostra being weak to water is probably better since there's like 0 threatening water monsters, but hopefully that does change later on. And of course Dreadqueen being fire means that she's really good against like Velkhana and Kirin, while not being weak to their attacks either, so that's pretty sweet. Alright, so with the rundown of Dreadqueen's stats out of the way, let's talk about her role and how she's going to do it. My Dreadqueen has a few jobs. The first is simply a fire-based damage dealer, which she can fulfill very well with her high base fire attack, her Valiant Fire buff from Pink Rathian, and strong fire moves such as Supernova from Teostra, or just Savage Fireball from Rathalos. Now the second job is to apply burns and blast blight. Now the Dust Gene from Teostra pretty much promises the entire field's gonna get blast blighted. I don't think I've ever seen it fail, which would make sense since it would have an 80% chance to apply per tick of each of the 5 hits since she has inflict rate up. While that would be overkill on a single target, she does kind of need the inflict rate up for burn application as well. However, I also recently got rid of burn application, so I'm going to kind of split this video into 2 parts, of a more status based Rathian and then my more attack based Rathian. So you do have a few choices with blast application as well as burn, because fire has a lot of good moves actually. Bombing Rain from Basil Goose also applies blast blight to everyone on the map, but does cost more kinship meter than Teostra's. However, the upside of that is that it's a speed fire attack, which is going to be very handy for not taking a hit because you can go ahead and trade on those head-to-heads and still come out on top. So at least we do have options there, as well as having the buff from Brachydios so we can have blast blight applied to all our attacks. I think that's kind of a waste of a turn to be honest, but that is another option for you. And then for the burn applications, you can use Supernova from Teostra for AoE and fire burns, or you can do Flame Burst from Dreadqueen for fire AoE. And then single target, you're definitely going to want to run Savage Fireball because it's a high damage and high chance to burn. Do note that these AoEs cannot crit unfortunately, so you're not going to be able to hit some really high numbers. And then lastly, you're going to want one skill to detonate the blast bite early. Teostra and Basil Goose have AoE forms of this attack, but they cost a lot of kinship meter. Now I opted to grab Detonator from Uragon, which is a weaker skill, but it only costs like 13 kinship meter, can crit, can set off detonations, can win head to heads, can do double attacks. So it's cheap and spammable. Detonator is probably the best move around, I swear. You do want a detonating attack because this way you can use the same monster to apply and trigger your own blast blights, which will hit for about 1000 to 1600 damage or more. It's a really nice status. Basil Goose's Ignition Breath is also a really good tech option if you need tech coverage, but the same thing kind of applies here in that you can't get crits with it and it does cost more kinship meter. So, there's not really much of a point to use it unless you really need the tech coverage, which you do because there's not very many tech options for fire, but Detonator is still better. Now to pair with Dreadqueen, I recommend running Teostra weapons on a hunter with inflict status up. Teostra Sword and Shield can apply blast bites really fast for a Dreadqueen to eat with Detonator, and you can also use Teostra's Hammer to eat the burn and blast blights with Blast Blight Chaser, as well as set up your own blast blights to let her detonate. So it synergizes really well between you and your monster, and trust me dude, the damage output for both of you guys when you're eating these statuses are really good. I'm a big fan of this setup. And so the one thing you do need to worry about is other attack types against Dreadqueen. Most fire attacks are power type, so it's really easy to have a force switch on Dreadqueen since she doesn't have very much coverage. Although if you're okay with losing some of your damage, you can sacrifice your power bingos and get those tech and speed skills from Basil Goose for added coverage, at the cost of also inflict rate up or power type bonuses. Goose attacks are great for coverage like I mentioned because they have speed and tech options, but they do cost more kinship meter and can't crit, which is kind of a loss in the long run. Dreadqueen has really good crit rate, plus toppled monsters guarantee a crit, so having skills that can crit is pretty important. Real quick on the topic of coverage moves, Savage Fireball versus Teostra Supernova that we talked about earlier, you're basically trading your AoE from Supernova for half the kinship cost for Savage Fireball. Both of them can't crit, both apply burns, so honestly in my eye I think Savage Fireball is better because there's not very many times you're going to need the AoE in the first place, and I mean there are some options, but you have plenty of fire skills that can do AoE, so you don't necessarily have to use the ones that cost 55 kinship meter. So overall this Dreadqueen is hitting really flipping hard. I can get anywhere between 1.7 and 2.7k on like detonator slaps, fireballs for about 2k, blast blight detonates for about 1 to 1.6k, like just all around the board this Rathian's hitting really hard. Obviously Teo is going to be a better option if you want to do this because he can do basically the exact same setup because monsters are just stat blocks now. So if you really want to go super meta, you can go Teo. Pretty much any monster works with this setup because there's nothing really unique about this and all the fire skills are basically interchangeable. But yeah, that's basically my Dreadqueen setup as a burn and bomber right now. She's one of my favorite monsters, and while I originally wanted her to be a poison type, that really didn't work out because Capcom doesn't want us playing with genes not native to the monster type. So that's a shame, but this one worked out really well. So that's basically all I have for now. Thank you all for watching, and good luck out there, hunters.